February 1945, Iwo Jima. Takahashi Toshiharu crouched in his concrete bunker, watching American tanks approach through the volcanic ash. He had been waiting for this moment. His unit had trained for months to destroy enemy armor. They knew the weak points of the Sherman tank. They had practiced with lunge mines and satchel charges. The tank stopped 150 yards from his position, too far for a suicide charge, close enough to hit with the 47mm anti-tank gun in the next bunker. Then something happened that Takahashi had never seen before. Where the main gun should have fired a shell, a stream of liquid erupted from the barrel, orange and black, moving like water through the air. The flame hit the neighboring bunker. Takahashi heard the screams. He wrote in his diary that night, "The enemy was burned out with a flamethrower. The flame is dark with black smoke. I could not see even an inch ahead." Takahashi survived that day. Most of his unit did not. What he witnessed was the debut of America's most terrifying weapon in the Pacific War. A weapon that would prove more effective at clearing fortifications in the next 4 months than any other system deployed. A weapon that Japanese defenders had no counter-tactic against. And the worst part was they never saw it coming. General Tadamaki Kurabayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944 with a single mission: make the Americans pay so heavily for this island that they would reconsider invading Japan itself. Kurabayashi was not a typical Japanese commander. He had lived in America. He had studied American industrial capacity. He understood that Japan could not match American firepower in a conventional battle. So he decided not to fight a conventional battle. Kurabayashi studied every Japanese defeat in the Pacific: Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu. The pattern was always the same. Japanese commanders met the Americans at the water's edge. They launched glorious banzai charges. American naval guns and aircraft slaughtered them in the open. Kurabayashi made a revolutionary decision. There would be no banzai charges on Iwo Jima. No meeting the enemy at the beach. No glorious deaths in open combat. His men would fight from underground. For 8 months, 5,000 Japanese soldiers spent nearly every waking hour digging. They carved 11 miles of interconnected tunnel into the volcanic rock. The original plan called for 17 miles, but American bombing interrupted construction. What they completed was enough. The tunnel system reached 7 stories deep in some places. Underground chambers large enough to hold 300 men. Hospitals with operating rooms 75 feet below the surface. Command centers connected by miles of telephone wire. Above ground, 1,500 fortified positions dotted the island. Concrete bunkers with walls 4 feet thick. Steel doors that opened only to fire, then sealed shut. Every position was designed with interlocking fields of fire. Every inch of the island's surface could be swept by Japanese guns. The genius was in the connections. When Americans cleared a bunker with grenades, Japanese soldiers would retreat through tunnels and reoccupy it from below. Positions that took hours to capture would be firing again within minutes. Kurabayashi had turned 8 square miles of volcanic rock into a fortress that defied conventional military tactics. American intelligence estimated the island would fall in 5 days. Before the Marines landed, American forces delivered the heaviest bombardment of any Pacific island. 74 consecutive days of aerial bombing. 6,800 tons of explosives dropped on 8 square miles of rock. Then the Navy arrived. 22,000 shells from battleships and cruisers. The island disappeared under smoke and fire. American planners were confident. Nothing could survive that kind of punishment. Intelligence officers predicted light resistance. The bombardment destroyed fewer than 200 of the 1,500 fortified positions. The tunnel system was virtually untouched. Most Japanese soldiers had not been scratched. They sat in their underground chambers and waited. Kurabayashi had given them specific instructions. Let the Americans land. Let them move inland. Let them think the bombardment worked. Then open fire from every direction at once. February 19, 1945. 30,000 Marines hit the beaches of Iwo Jima. The first wave met almost no resistance. Some Marines thought the bombardment had actually worked. It was a silence born of superhuman discipline. For nearly an hour, thousands of Japanese gunners watched the invasion force land through their firing slits. They could see the targets. They could hear the Marines shouting, but not one man pulled a trigger. They waited in the darkness, breathing in the sulfur and dust until the trap was full. Then Kurabayashi gave the order. Every hidden gun position opened fire simultaneously. Artillery from Mount Suribachi. Machine guns from bunkers invisible in the volcanic ash. Mortars pre-registered on every yard of the beach. The black sand swallowed vehicles. Tanks couldn't climb the steep terraces. Marines had nowhere to hide on the open beach. By nightfall, 2,400 Americans were dead or wounded. The Marines had advanced only 700 yards, and they hadn't even reached the main defensive line yet. What followed became weeks of cave-by-cave, bunker-by-bunker fighting. Marines cleared a position, moved forward, then took fire from behind as Japanese soldiers emerged from tunnels. Man-portable flamethrowers helped, but they had fatal limitations. An operator had to get within 40 yards of a bunker while carrying 70 pounds of fuel on his back. Japanese snipers specifically targeted flamethrower operators. By the third day, Marine commanders were desperate for anything that could break the pattern. That's when 8 modified Sherman tanks arrived from Hawaii. 5 months before Iwo Jima, Colonel George Unmacked assembled a team at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. Unmacked commanded the Chemical Warfare Service's most secret project in the Pacific. His mission was simple to state and almost impossible to achieve: build a weapon that could burn Japanese soldiers out of caves without getting Americans killed in the process. The problem was well understood. Man-portable flamethrowers worked, but operators died at horrific rates. They had to get close to bunkers. They were slow. They were obvious targets. What Unmacked needed was a flamethrower that could hit targets from a distance, carry enough fuel for sustained operations, and protect its crew from enemy fire. The solution was obvious. Put a flamethrower on a tank. Previous attempts had failed. The Canadian Ronson system had a range of only 60 to 80 yards. Fuel capacity allowed just 30 seconds of fire. Mechanical failures exceeded 40%. Unmacked's team would have to start from scratch. Unmacked requisitioned 25 men from the 117th Naval Construction Battalion, the Seabees. These weren't ordinary sailors. They were mechanics, welders, electricians, and machinists who had built airfields under fire across the Pacific. They solved problems that stumped conventional engineers. The Seabees worked alongside the 43rd Chemical Laboratory Company and the 5th Marine Tank Battalion, Army, Navy, and Marines together, united by a single goal. They started with 8 M4A3 Sherman medium tanks. The 75mm main gun was removed. In its place went a flame projector connected to 300 gallons of napalm-thickened fuel. The system operated under high pressure, pushing range beyond 150 yards. Some shots reached 200 yards in ideal conditions. Each tank required 1,200 man-hours of modification, 1,100 electrical connections changed, and 150 custom-machined parts. The Seabees worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts beside their welding equipment, testing and failing, then testing again. By January 1945, 8 tanks were ready. They looked identical to standard Shermans from the outside. Japanese defenders wouldn't know they were flame tanks until the first shot. The flame tanks arrived on Iwo Jima on the 3rd day of fighting. Marine commanders weren't sure what to do with them. There was no doctrine for mechanized flamethrowers, no training on how to integrate them with infantry. The tank crews figured it out themselves. The first target was a concrete bunker that had stopped a Marine company for 6 hours. Artillery couldn't crack it. Grenades couldn't reach the firing slits. 3 Marines had died trying to get close enough with portable flamethrowers. The Sherman rolled to within 150 yards, still too far for Japanese anti-tank guns to reliably penetrate its frontal armor. One burst of flame. For seconds, the napalm flowed into the bunker through the firing slit. It consumed all the oxygen inside. The defenders died before they could react. Word spread instantly through the Marine lines. The flame tanks could do in seconds what infantry couldn't accomplish in hours. Within days, every Marine commander on Iwo Jima was requesting flame tank support. Japanese soldiers had never seen anything like it. Their bunkers were designed to withstand bombs and shells, concrete and steel that could absorb direct hits from naval guns. None of it mattered against liquid fire. The thickened fuel didn't just burn on impact. It splashed against the concrete and clung to the walls. It found every gap, every crack, every ventilation shaft. It poured into tunnels and spread through underground chambers. Soldiers who survived the initial blast often died from oxygen depletion as the fire consumed the air in enclosed spaces. The psychological impact was devastating. Veterans later recalled that the sound was almost as frightening as the heat. A distinctive, pressurized roar like a jet engine starting up that drowned out the sharp crack of rifle fire. When that sound echoed through the tunnels, every man inside knew the bunker had been compromised. A captured Japanese commander later told American interrogators that his men would abandon positions the moment they heard a Sherman approaching. Not when the tanks fired, but when they heard the engines. The fear was so intense that it bordered on panic. Colonel Fred Caldwell witnessed a scene that captured the desperation of Japanese soldiers facing flame tanks. A Japanese officer charged out of his cave toward an approaching Sherman. He was alone, carrying only his samurai sword. Caldwell watched the man run directly at the armored vehicle, sword raised, screaming. The tank commander saw him coming, traversed the flame projector, and fired. The stream engulfed him instantly. He fell before he could take another step. All by himself against the tank, Caldwell recalled later. I don't know what the hell he thought he was doing. But Caldwell understood something the officer could not admit. There was nothing else to do. No counter-tactic, no defensive measure, no way to fight back against a weapon that could kill from 150 yards away. The samurai code demanded action, so the officer charged and died. Takahashi Toshiharu's diary describes what happened to soldiers who couldn't escape the flame tanks. His unit received orders to charge an approaching Sherman with satchel charges. 8 men tasked with getting close enough to destroy the tank before it could fire. They never got the chance. The tank stopped 90 meters away, too far to charge. It didn't advance. Then the Marines did something worse than burning them. They collapsed the cave entrance. Takahashi wrote that night, "We got buried alive deep under the ground. 8 people who were supposed to die by charging the tanks were deeply buried. There is no air, food, or water. It becomes a mummy as it is." He survived by digging through the rubble with his bayonet while others passed debris backward in the darkness. Hours of work created a hole barely the size of a human head. Of the 8 men ordered to charge the tank, only Takahashi escaped. British military researchers analyzed flamethrower effectiveness after the war, and their findings explained everything. Conventional weapons produced 1 enemy death per 270 gallons of fuel expended. Flamethrowers produced 1 enemy surrender per 9 gallons. The ratio suggested flamethrowers were 30 times more effective at causing surrenders than deaths. This was a psychological weapon masquerading as an incendiary one. Japanese soldiers who would fight to the death against bullets and artillery often surrendered rather than face the flames. The same men who charged machine guns with bayonets would abandon fortified positions at the sight of a flame tank. Kurabayashi had built a powerful defense against conventional weapons, but he had no answer for terror. The Japanese had anti-tank weapons. The 47mm gun could penetrate Sherman armor at close range, but close range was the problem. The flame tanks operated at 150 yards. The 47mm needed to hit side armor to be effective, which meant the tank had to pass the gun position. The Shermans never passed. They stopped at range and burned the bunker without exposing their flanks. Suicide squads with lunge mines were theoretically effective. A soldier with a shaped charge on a pole could destroy any tank if he reached it. But reaching it meant sprinting across an open killing zone under machine gun fire from the tank's supporting infantry, then surviving long enough to detonate the mine. Almost no one made it. The flame tanks had found the gap in Japanese defensive doctrine. They could strike from beyond the range of nearly every weapon the defenders possessed. The flame tanks had another advantage Japanese soldiers couldn't anticipate. They looked identical to regular Shermans. The Seabees mounted the flame projector inside a dummy tube designed to resemble the original 75mm gun. From the outside, there was no way to distinguish a flame tank from a standard Sherman until it fired. Japanese defensive planning assumed tanks would engage with cannon and machine guns, so anti-tank weapons were positioned accordingly. When a Sherman approached a bunker, defenders expected a duel. Their guns against the tank's gun, both sides trading shots until one was destroyed. Instead, the first indication that something was different was the stream already striking their firing slit. The deception bought the tank crew the only thing that mattered: the first shot. The 8 flame tanks on Iwo Jima proved the concept. Okinawa would prove it could scale. The 713th Tank Battalion converted all 54 of their Shermans into flame tanks specifically for the invasion, an entire battalion equipped with nothing but flamethrowers. They landed in April 1945 and spent the next 3 months breaking through the Shuri Line, one of the most formidable defensive positions Japan had constructed. The results were staggering. The 713th killed 4,788 Japanese soldiers and captured 49. Battalion losses were 8 killed and 1 missing, a kill ratio approaching 600 to 1. They expended 76,000 gallons of napalm burning Japanese positions across southern Okinawa. Some estimates place the total above 200,000 gallons across all operations. One Seabee who operated a flame tank on Iwo Jima summarized the weapon's effectiveness. "We did in 6 hours with 4 loads of fuel what a tank battalion and 3 infantry companies had been trying to do for 5 days. General Kurabayashi died on Iwo Jima in late March 1945. His body was never found. His defensive strategy had worked exactly as designed against conventional weapons. The bombardment failed. The initial assault stalled. American casualties mounted exactly as he had predicted. Then 8 tanks changed everything. The tunnels he built to protect his men became mechanisms of entrapment. The deeper they went, the harder it was to escape when the flames came. Sectors where flame tanks operated saw significantly fewer American casualties. They also accounted for thousands of Japanese deaths across Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The men who operated the tanks rarely spoke about it afterward. Some struggled with the memories for decades. One operator later said he dreamed of fighting fires instead of starting them. Kurabayashi built his fortress to defeat everything America had previously used in the Pacific War. He could not prepare for a weapon that didn't exist until the Seabees created it. The flames died decades ago.